When I was invited to talk about the concept of brave, I thought of many ways people prove to be brave in the world. They can fight for the global justice, they simply overcome their fears and human limits by sailing the deepest oceans and climbing the highest mountains. They give their lives for the sake of others. They cross half of the world in the search of meaning. I don't do things like that on a daily basis, but I do know people who prove to be truly brave and openly vulnerable. These are actually young people, sometimes very young, and they have courage to travel half of the world, far from their families and friends, not necessarily speaking any other language than their mother tongue, in order to share their art and culture, to teach and learn from others, to cooperate and co-create, and occasionally perform in front of a 1,000-people audience. And that, in my opinion, would be an idea worth spreading. So I first met children and youth like this in frame of a Poland-based international project here in Wrocław back in 2017 as a freshly baked graduate in cultural studies with little to no practical experience of what cultures actually are outside of the library and conference halls. So I was sincerely blown away by the coolness and vivid diversity of these young artists, embracing and celebrating their cultures. Those were young musicians, dancers, acrobats, circus artists from all over the world. 136 kids, aged 8 to 16, brought in with their groups a 10-minute performance per group, outcasting their skills. And they had the task of teaching others what they can do, learning from others what others can do, and eventually, if everything goes well, create a common performance, synthesizing all the learned and taught stuff. Everything in frame of 3 weeks. What do you think? A little bit challenging, right? And you know what? They always manage to teach, to learn, and to create. The group of children can teach each other in a way no adult teacher with years of experience might do, with a great deal of patience and sense of humor. The group of children can create a performance irrespective of whether they speak the same language, come from the same culture, have the same taste in music or dance. The group of children can prove that understanding and even true friendship is possible across the differences in culture, age, religion, and social class. In this project, kids meet for the first time with no possibility to interact in a way we all might be used to, since they usually do not speak the same language. They receive a very important task, though, which is to create a common performance combining the creative elements of all groups, be it theater, music, dance, circus training, or film study. The entire contact among the participants then relies mainly on nonverbal communication and common play. Until recently, we would also strongly stick to the idea of art being a universal language here. And in most cases, those former participants from the previous years were indeed the young artists who selected consciously the way of art as the true path, or simply took an immense pleasure in doing it. To a big extent, it was even one of the most important criteria in our search for artistic groups. Last year, however, revolutionized our approach. Last year, we experimented a lot, just like many other people in the world. So imagine, the borders were closed. Coming together even to have lunch, let alone create any kind of artistic gig, was completely out of question. And even though arts remained an important element of the project, we were inviting individual participants to join, instead of the existing artistic groups with their ready-made artistic program. And as a result, we had a considerable shift in what these young individuals were actually bringing at place. They were bringing their personal experiences, their reflections, their worries on the current global situation and generally on life and the process of growing. They were challenging us on the very subtle questions of change and transformation as individuals, but also as a society. That year, as probably never before in the history of the project, we had the kids on stage reflecting on such topics as good versus evil, climate change, equality, social justice, loneliness, and courage. Now, what can one learn from such experience? The experience of performing with others includes a great deal of vulnerability. You have to synchronize yourself with others. You have to blend your breath and your movement with someone else's. How crucial it is nowadays for children not to aspire to total control and success per se, defining their ambitions and possibilities as above the common lot of human life, but instead to learn to appreciate vividly the ways in which human weaknesses are experienced in a wide range of social situations, the global pandemic being a good example. After all, much fear of your own creativity is the fear of the unknown. So embrace the unknown. By yourself, but better with a group. When the kid undertakes the role of peer teacher or peer learner, she or he enters this platform of sharing, in which everyone takes part in the process of learning, exploration, and reflection. Every single participant doesn't just take this role of teaching or learning. Instead, as one of our former participants, Leo, says, it comes in this beautiful package. You teach, learn, as you learn, teach. Although the workshops themselves are facilitated by the experienced artistic instructors, it is primarily the participants who take this responsibility for their learning process and for the learning process of the group. They, therefore, develop skills in organizing and planning learning activities, working collaboratively with others, giving and receiving feedback, and then evaluating their own learning. In this way, kids also get into the heart of each other's cultures in just a few weeks, since they learn about music, dance, food rituals, and counting from other cultures. So they learn that these many different cultures are available to them. They cross the barriers that expectation and local culture have thrown in their way, showing that they can be world citizens. Last year, we worked with kids and youth living permanently in Poland. But I must say that the final outcome of their common work would comprise the elements of so many different cultures that one would have an impression that the borders were magically open and the international traditional exchange took place. And it's not only our attempts at connecting to young artists living abroad online and have live jam sessions on Zoom with 5 seconds delay, obviously. And those of you who heard how the Georgian choir sounds like should check our Zoom version of it. So anyways, it is this wide range of interests, of personal and family stories of the participants that made last year as diverse as any other previous edition, but yet it was also super valuable and unique. It turned out that kids living in the same city, even in the same neighborhood, might have incredibly diverse tastes and hobbies that they would happily share with others. I also believe that this common play and common performance developed in the participants the capacity for the so-called positional thinking, the ability to see the world from another creator's viewpoint. After all, it is empathy that raises a child as a citizen of the world, and the ability to sympathetically imagine the condition of another person. but a useful skill for the future of the humankind, right? In all these ways, kids learn about their role in the local community and the world, and this, in turn, can lead to many forms of curiosity. As many of our former participants find themselves actively engaged in the activities of the local community, or they go on to study geography, history, arts, and literature. Also by the fact of being regularly lost in translation and seeing how another group of kids might make sense of the world completely differently. How, as my favorite philosopher Martha Nussbaum said, all translation is in fact imperfect interpretation. It gives a young person the essential lesson in cultural humility. The project, therefore, has this urgent and important task to cultivate in children and youth the ability to see themselves as members of a global society and a still more heterogeneous world, and to understand the character and history of the diverse groups that inhabit it. Before getting to know the project and all the amazing people I met through it, the world was pretty much a simple categorization to me. I would believe the news, I would take for granted what I learned in my studies or heard in my family. I would sincerely think that there is the world out there and there is another kind of world here around me, and they would not necessarily meet. Thank God, soon enough, I came to the realization, quite a hard one to process, that we, each one of us, are responsible for the existing chaos, for all the misery and confusion throughout the whole world, because we have contributed to it in our daily lives and decisions. At the same time, we, each one of us living in the world, can bring about an entirely different quality. And this is what brave kids can teach each other, and they can teach the world. By creating their own platform of mutual understanding and respect, but also creativity and fun, they give us hope for a better future for us all. When I was invited to talk about the concept of brave, I thought of many, many ways people prove to be brave in the world. And I thought of many of those brave kids I met in the last few years. And you know what? They do fight for the global justice with the help of most probably the most powerful and sustainable channel ever, which is art. They do overcome their fears and human limits by sailing the deepest oceans of self-doubt and uncertainty and climbing the highest mountains of stage fright and embarrassment. They do cross half of the world in the search of meaning. The meaning free from borders, from prejudice and fear. The great Polish pedagogue, true believer and supporter of children's rights, Janusz Korczak, once said, "My greatest fault is that I am no longer a child." So, before we end this exciting journey of peer learning and creativity, it is appropriate for us to ask this question: what can we learn from these children? From every child, from your own child, if you have one, or from your own inner child. We are in a point in time where the world is seeing a complete and quite dramatic shift. And it will be as impactful as the Industrial Revolution, the printing invention, the TikTok viral videos. So by entering this new world of unbearable remoteness, in which we study remotely, we work remotely, we even live remotely from each other, may this power of solidarity and friendship help us create the closeness and connection so much needed in the world right now. Thank you.